All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Twin Speaks, our Twin Peaks Watch Party podcast. My name is Scotty, also known as EBC. Also joining me, my co-host Isnib. And today, this is episode number 8, and we are looking at Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 6, Demons, and Season 2, Episode 7, Lonely Souls. Here we go.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot happened in this episode.
Yeah,
Uh, Probably more so than the previous two episodes put together,
yeah.
potentially. Where on earth do you want to start, sir?
Well, actually, I thought this was pretty straightforward.
Mm,
Like as opposed to maybe the last two episodes where they were kind of just chugging along and
mm,
advancing the story and revealing things. It felt kind of oversimplified. This almost felt like the episode before the end of a season episode where
right.
we've got a greater revelation that is leading to a climax. I was actually waiting for something like that. So um,
Mm,
seeing this kind of how do I put it? It was satisfactory.
mm,
Gave a sense of satisfaction that that's what David Lynch chose to reveal at this point in the storyline,
yeah.
which was, in my mind, uh, like the biggest break of the series so far. It
Mm,
wasn't a cliffhanger. It wasn't a uh, adding more to the mystery or the give and take of reveal versus adding more to
mm,
the complex web that we're seeing, or pulling the camera back to show more and more of the picture as you go along. This was a solid resolution to a a big portion of the mystery, which
mm,
was something that I had started to suspect a long time ago, that there's far
yeah.
more than just the standard human interaction here. We've got some kind
Mm,
of alien entity or natural parasite that resides on the earth but has not been seen before, or
mm,
some kind of maybe even, still at this point, supernatural influence. We don't know. Um, so that part of it, saying we've had this big mystery all along where there's all these little clues successively that are leading up to this point, it's extremely uh, satisfying to finally have
yeah.
a resolution, or at least a partial resolution to that big
Mm,
chunk of it.
yeah, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it almost leads me to like see this as a watershed moment where
Mm,
now we're transitioning into a second part of the storyline
yeah.
that is going to take this big chunk of that information and run with it, and now we're going to start not only resolving the other mysteries, but it's almost like the foundation now for the rest of the series.
Right.
um,
Yeah, totally.
so I really like that. But we'll
Perfect.
we'll discuss that in more detail since that's kind of like the climax of the episode at the end,
Yeah.
I think. So let's start right at the beginning with the fallout with Harold. Harold
Mm,
clearly has some mental issues besides just being a shut-in.
yeah.
And they came to a head, which I think maybe is just kind of like indicative of people having a breaking point, and once that breaking point is reached, they kind of snap and they go into some other kind of modified behavior that
Mm,
is damaging to themselves or someone else. In this case,
yeah.
both. I mean, Harold was about to either tie the girls up or just violently attack them or something like
Yeah.
that. So to see um, Harold more solidly being presented as a psychopath, somebody who
Mm,
has that breaking point, and he was just not pushed in previous episodes to that
yeah.
relatively low breaking point.
Yeah.
which
It's
was the
clear.
sense of
Yeah.
betrayal.
Yeah. Now, clearly, there's something in his past where he's felt betrayed before.
Mhm.
Um, but you know, and then he's like, "Oh, this lovely young lady Donna is my new friend, and possibly more." And now, oh no, she just was trying to use me and betrayed me.
Right.
You know, uh, I think most of us would, you know, take the whole thing with a grain of salt and be like, okay, you felt betrayed or let down, but physically injuring yourself, going off the deep end, possibly threatening violence to people because of that, it seems like a fairly extreme reaction.
Right.
Yeah, no, the you'd think the most would be, oh my God, Donna, you're not the person I thought you were. Both of you, get out of my house right now. How dare you? I never want to see you ever again.
Right. That's a normal
But
person's reaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right, exactly. But Harold's not exactly normal. But thankfully, James happened to be there because obviously he had overheard what was going on.
Yeah.
Um, and he stepped in and saved the day, so to speak. And then obviously we saw a little bit of Harold after the fact because he was, I mean, if it wasn't for his extreme agoraphobia, presumably he would have given chase and or something. But we see him, like you say, going into kind of almost a routine, maybe coping behavior, just you know, watering his orchids,
Right.
and then he's just can't deal with the mental anguish of what has just happened to him or what he's perceived has just happened to him. However, of course, the Laura's secret diary was still left in his possession. To which obviously so we see later Donna informing Sheriff Truman that about it, which Truman seemed a bit like, you'd think he'd
Yeah.
want to investigate that, at least go and meet the guy and ask him about it, but never mind.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I thought that part of it was kind of like a little more important than anything
Mm,
going on with Harold because regardless of what Truman thinks, clearly now there's going to be information in the secret diary that is pertinent to solving the murder,
mm,
but we don't we don't know what that is supposed to be yet.
yeah.
Harold knows. He's
Mm,
read the diary. He knows who the killer is. He
mm,
intimated as much in the previous episode there. But from my perspective, Harold is a very run of the mill psychopath.
right.
He checks off all of the necessary boxes, but he doesn't stand out. He's not
Mm,
he's not there's going to be a point at which Harold just kind of drops off the face of the earth in this series.
mm,
I'm sure because once that uh, role is fulfilled of what does Harold know, and then now the audience knows what Harold knows. He's no longer necessary,
right.
and and
Bless him.
and and he's filling that role of the crazy guy that is an antagonist to
Mm,
our good characters there, but beyond that, I don't see him playing a larger role because it's almost like he kind of accidentally became a character. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, David Lynch just said, hey, maybe we'll write this guy in someday. No, I
mm,
mean that in the sense that he, first of all, I had noted previously that it seemed kind of odd they were introducing his character at the time that they did.
yeah.
And it was kind of like accidental to the way the storyline was progressing that they
Yeah.
had to have somebody in possession of this secret diary. It could have been
Mm,
somebody else that was already an established character, but David Lynch created this new character to fill that role, and I think I stated before that I thought that was a little bit of a negative on the portrayal of the storyline.
mm,
But more than that, you're not going to get much more out of Harold.
Mm.
and what his character is capable of at this point. I think he's going to, he's already revealed himself as the kind of person who is going to uh, only be useful for certain things in the remainder of the
Mm.
storyline. He's not going to be able to really save himself or save somebody else. He might have like a little bit of a turn of character there,
Yeah.
but you see what's happening with Bobby as an
Mm.
example. You see like he's still the same old Bobby. He might have
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
like that little bit of redemption moment with his father, but he's still a shithead, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't last.
So I don't see the depth of character like I do with some of the other characters
Yeah.
in Harold's
Got ya.
storyline, that he's going to be anything more than the psychopath that has the pertinent information that we need. So therefore I see the resolution with Harold being at some point Truman or Donna and James go back and they get the secret diary and they have a little bit more conflict with him, and then it's over. And now we've
Right.
got the
Yeah.
pertinent information.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which is the purpose of his character.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Uh, y- you know.
Yeah, you would
Uh,
never we never know with David Lynch and his antics.
no. No. Indeed. Indeed. I guess that leads on quite fairly naturally to Donna and James and Madeline. The whole kind of little love triangle thing they've
Oh,
got.
you
Obviously,
listen to you with your proper English, Madeline. No,
Maddie, she obviously as they got out of there, James was like, curiously, I guess it was just maybe it's just 'cause he was closer, and maybe subconsciously James perceives Donna to be more self-sufficient than maybe Madeline. He when he busted in there, he grabbed Madeline. Maybe it could have, let's say, she was just the closest one to him and also Harold. But as soon as they got out there, he's like, "Oh, Donna, you're the one. I've realised." And then we have the conversation with him and Maddie later at the lake,
yeah.
where he's like, "I think I was kind of into you." She's like, "You're only into me because I look like my cousin Laura," and he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
You should be with Donna. He's like, "Yeah, I guess." It's like, James, what, you don't even know what you want, do you, buddy?
Well,
Bless.
James, yeah, he's a little bit boyish in the way
Yeah.
he handles his emotions. Like, oh my God, she looks like Laura, and I loved Laura more than I love Donna, and I think I'm
Mm.
going to, lay into this fad for as long as I can, and maybe Maddie will be Laura for me. And oh, Maddie's leaving tomorrow. Oh, I guess I
Yeah.
can't have Maddie slash Laura anymore. I'll go back to Donna. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, James. No, don't get me wrong. James is a good man, but yeah,
Yes.
he has quite a bit of
He's not
trouble.
fully matured yet.
Sort out
Yeah.
your emotions, mate.
Yeah.
The the boyish nature of James is I mean
Yeah.
he literally is almost he's a mix between a motorcycle cool jerk and a Boy Scout, and
Yeah.
he doesn't quite have a good handle on his emotions and how to handle them and how to uh, or more specifically how to handle them as an adult, and be
No,
responsible
indeed.
for his actions and what he's, but he's definitely a good man. And
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't foresee this aspect of it, that Maddie was going to leave. I thought she was there permanently, and maybe something
No,
will
I mean,
prevent her from
she
leaving.
came.
But
No, I think the idea was because I think was it last episode we said it'd been. You were shocked to find out it'd been 12 days
yeah,
since Laura's murder, and it seems like more like 12 weeks or even months.
yeah,
But so I guess we're maybe like 2 weeks. So I guess she just came here to support her aunt and uncle in their grief. There was like I guess there was nobody else in the family that seemed closer or more appropriate. In that, obviously, we're not familiar with um the larger Palmer family, but so she came for the funeral, hung around for a bit, so time for her to go home, I guess. Makes sense. You know, even though obviously her uncle Leland is now a murderer and is is going to be going to trial for murder
Oh,
at some point in
that's
the near future.
that's why Maddie's leaving. She's like, "Well, I came here for Laura's funeral. Oh, and Leland killed a person. My uncle is a murderer. Time to go." You know.
Yeah, right. It's. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unusual, but
Um.
uh,
Even still, that in my mind contradicts what was said before by Maddie, that she came there and living in Twin Peaks is like living in a dream world
yeah,
almost, and people think she's Laura and she looks like Laura and all these other things. I honestly am surprised by her leaving.
mm,
I would have expected her to be a continuing main supporting character through
yeah.
at least the end of
At
season
least the end
two
of the
here.
season.
So
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting to me. But at the very least, that then clears up the love triangle, and
yeah,
James and Donna can be together without interference from James's idiotic,
yeah,
antics. And
yeah. And however silly James can be, I do
right,
hope it works out for him and Donna. We'll have to
right,
see as we go along. But it's nice it's brought resolution to that side storyline there.
and I think it will. I think that
Mm,
resolution for James and Donna will come, because that's what you would hope to see at the end of that storyline, is that they are together at the end and they're
mm,
happy. That's the happily ever after part of
yeah,
this storyline. You want to see James and Donna back together with no problems.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, all right. So let's go over to Cooper and Hawk and Truman arriving back with Audrey and bringing her
Mm,
back to safety. Um, Recovering from the drugs that were injected into her system, and the things that she was saying at that point, I found very interesting. These murmurings in her feverish
mm,
state: black, cold, hand on her throat, hurting and sinking. Um,
mm,
to me, that could be either just vague references to how this you know drug trip feels,
mm,
and some of her sensory perception during this thing, or she is also having some kind of extrasensory perception,
mm.
hallucinations or things like that that are playing into it with the broader picture of what's going on in Twin
Yeah,
Peaks, and maybe that's brought on by the drugs
maybe,
or
maybe.
heightened by the drugs.
Mm.
Um,
Yes. Neat. See aside that aside, uh, she seems like she's going to be okay.
yeah,
But clearly, obviously, she knows not all of, but many more of her father's secrets, which she kind of hinted at to him, and clearly he picked up on that.
right.
So Ben's, aside from everything else that Ben has on his plate, now he knows that his beloved daughter is. Well, I say beloved. He seemed more interested in getting the
Yeah,
the
yeah. Ben
briefcase of
doesn't love
cash
it.
back than
Ben doesn't
no.
love anybody. Um,
But obviously he doesn't. You know, he's like this. It's a new problem for him. Like, it's well, here's my daughter. She's not supposed to know about any of this, but she does. So what am
right,
I going to do about any of that?
right. And
Well, I'm glad
clearly
she's.
now
Regardless, I'm glad she's all right.
clearly that's going to put them as direct opposing forces. Now Ben and
Mm,
his daughter are
quite.
going to be at odds with each other, with their uh say useful information on each other, much
Mm,
more so Audrey being in a precarious position now. What is she going to be able to do with this information that not only does her father own
right.
One Eye Jacks, but also that he, breaks in new girls, and
Yeah.
everything else that went along with that, the stuff that she got from Emery, the stuff that she got from Blackie. Audrey wanted all of the information. Well, now she has it. What is she going to
Yeah.
be able to
Was
do
it
with
was it
it
worth the cost to Audrey?
at
That's the
her own
thing.
peril? Right.
Yeah,
Um,
bless her. I mean, she's obviously gonna have matured and got a bit wiser from the whole experience, at least. Because obviously, if we look back to the beginning of the series,
yeah.
not only is she very naive, even a step further, she's a bit of a bitch. I think I remember your initial reaction to Audrey. She's like, "What? This little bitch? What's she
I
playing at?"
I still think that of her. I still think
Mm.
she's, at the very least
She's doing all this for her
precocious.
own ends. Yeah, yes,
Okay.
indeed, at the very least.
But I mean, I don't see her as an evil person. I just
No,
saw her as, what do they call that? Chaotic neutral, or
yeah, can you?
she's such a chaotic force that kind of
Mm,
throws a monkey wrench into everybody's works there, and it has gotten her in some severe trouble by this
yeah.
point. That's her action. She inserted herself into that, and now she's reaping the consequences of interacting with and not being smart enough to
Mm,
try to outwit the bad people that she was interacting with. So she got burned. Um,
mm.
Maybe she learned the lesson from that, but maybe not,
Let's hope so.
because in the end, she's very precocious.
Mm. She's
Um,
okay for now, at least.
yeah, so we'll see. Um, so then also arriving, we have, so that was David Lynch himself, right, playing Cole,
Yep,
Cooper's
Gordon Cole. Yeah.
supervisor. Yeah, quite a
Well,
character.
I guess, yeah, I guess I would ask, firstly, one, what was your thoughts on a creator writing themselves into their work of fiction? Obviously, he's playing a character, so he's just much, and you've done this yourself in at least one
Right,
of your
yeah.
audio dramas. Um, he's not doing a Stephen King and writing himself as himself into one of his fictional stories. But
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that? And also, what's your general thoughts on the character of Gordon Cole being Cooper's direct supervisor?
Yeah, so on writing, see, without knowing whether or not Lynch wrote the character with himself in
Mm,
mind, or
indeed, he may have wrote the character and then been, there's no appropriate actor. I'll just
exactly,
play the role. Yeah.
exactly. Like, I mean, I've done it both ways in
Mm,
my stuff, where I've written a character with myself in mind for the role, but I've also had to take a look around and see, okay, the people that I have available to me in our community to fill these roles, I don't necessarily have somebody that I want to use
right.
for that. Maybe somebody would fill it, but I feel
Mm,
maybe I could do that better myself, or I've got a better
absolutely.
concept of what that's supposed to be. Or like in, you mentioned Stephen King there, I remember watching Rose Red when
Mm,
that was on. It was a TV miniseries, and he wrote himself into that, like he does all of those things,
mm.
as a pizza delivery man. So he
Oh, okay.
was literally on screen for, I think, like, I don't know, 45 seconds or something. And it was a very minor role, and I get that. But the same thing, like with Stan Lee making his
Mm,
appearances in the superhero movies up until his death, and having these
yeah.
cameos. Um, Clearly, that's not what David Lynch was doing here. David Lynch was
No.
trying to fill a role for one reason or the other. He either designed it for himself, or he didn't find anybody that really was going to fill it. I'm
Yeah.
leaning towards the former, simply because
Mm,
the quirkiness that David
mm.
Lynch has added to quite a few of the characters. I mean, we started with Cooper and his idiosyncrasies, but you
Yeah.
know the the quirkiness that is added to characters is extremely specific, not generalized.
Mm,
It's not put
yeah.
there to broaden the appeal of the characters necessarily in a generic sense. He has
Mm,
added very specific quirks to each and every character in order to make it almost more exotic, to make it, you know,
yeah.
appeal in a different style. And um, as soon as I caught what the quirkiness of Cole was, it made like perfect sense. This is what David
Right.
Lynch would do with this character. That he
100%.
is near deaf, so everything that Cole does has to be near shouting. So if you want Cole to understand you, you have to yell, and everybody else
Yeah.
is going to know what's going on and what's being said and all of that. Like Truman coming into that. We can hear you out here, right? Um, so that was great. Um, but yeah, I'm leaning
Excellent. I'm
towards
glad
the.
I'm glad you like him, and you obviously you don't
Yeah,
mind that.
he's definitely an interesting and I think likable character because of that
Yeah,
quirk. Like he'd be
yeah,
he'd
definitely.
be fairly bland without it.
Right. Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed.
He's just coming to provide some information, so that this quirk really makes Cole's character stand out and make him memorable. So
Mm,
I think it's a positive. It
yeah,
maybe can be a little annoying at times based on what is going on, but he also does an excellent job of building that into the storyline, like the dichotomy between conversation that shouldn't be heard by anybody and conversation that it's okay for people to hear, and the way
yeah,
he plays off of those two things.
totally,
So it's not a negative in my mind, but it definitely makes him memorable. Uh,
totally.
and I think
Yeah,
he also plays that well, the way the
yeah,
Cole
yeah, exactly.
is written.
Agreed. I feel so. But yeah, glad you like him. So, the some of the information we got from him, he got some forensic information he brought from Albert. One, um, I don't know what a Vicuna coat is if that's a brand or a type of coat. But that was what presumably the person who shot Cooper was wearing, apparently. Um, Also, they found pages of paper scraps near the murder site along the train tracks. They feel were from a diary, presume maybe Laura's. Um, that was the info brought, and then he started to go on about Cooper, you doing okay? I don't want a repeat of what happened to you in Pittsburgh. Now we don't know what happened in Pittsburgh with Cooper. Obviously, some other case where something happened. It sounded like he also got injured on that case. Um, and then, of course, he has the letter, which is seemingly from his old partner, Wyndham Earl, this former FBI agent who may have gone insane and has subsequently vanished from the place he was being held, with an opening move in a chess game. Um, sent to Cooper as a message, to which Cole is like, "Oh, you need to watch your back, and we need to look out for you." So this it almost suggests this is as we've brought some storylines to resolution, we're starting a new one regarding Cooper's former partner, who may be insane and also have some kind of uh, history with Coop, or some unfinished business, shall we say, whether good or bad.
Right. So I see a couple of things here. He's introducing this as a new subplot, basically.
Mm,
He laid the bedwork for that previously, which is this former partner of Cooper's has now apparently gone insane and is sending him this letter, which is an opening chess move. And that leads me to believe that no matter what else is going on with Bob and the
mm,
murder of Laura and the previous murder in the state that he was investigating, and now the mention of Pittsburgh, you've got a new adversary for Cooper
mm,
in Wyndham Earl, this former partner who has gone insane and it seems to me is now on the criminal side of things. If
mm,
there is a danger to Cooper that Cole is aware of, and now Cooper is aware of, and Cooper agrees with Cole that this is a threat.
Mm.
I can't see it playing out any other way necessarily, although I may have the details wrong, that Wyndham Earl is now an opponent of Cooper's and someone that he is going to have to outwit at some point in the
Yeah.
future to survive or to continue his investigation or something like that. It's a new threat that Cooper will have to overcome to bring resolution to the series as a whole. And it wasn't necessarily a problem before until Cooper got to Twin Peaks and was making serious advancement in this murder case.
Right.
Now Wyndham Earl has said, well, guess what? Now you've got a new problem to deal with.
Exactly.
And Cooper is going to have to face this.
Yeah, it seems likely.
So that'll be interesting to see how that storyline develops. An additional subplot to be sure, but also is if I'm reading David Lynch and his intentions with the series right, it's definitely going to play into the main resolution.
Yeah.
Some kind of connection between Wyndham Earl and Bob and these murders, and just essentially maybe almost the mastermind behind it, or I could see maybe some kind of connection in which Wyndham Earl, as the former partner and an associate agent at the FBI, saw all of the connecting information that Cooper is after, and it drove him insane to the point where he's now on the wrong side of things.
Maybe.
Something like that.
Interesting. We shall see.
We shall see.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see what else we got here. Let's touch briefly on Leo.
Right. Yeah.
Being
Shelley, Bobby, Leo situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like it's their scam to get $5,000 a month has kind of backfired.
It is.
And they're kind of part of me feels like they should have known better, but they're young, they're naive, they don't understand how these things work.
Shelley, like I said, Shelley has quickly become my favorite character simply because of the way she deals with things and reacts with things. She's not perfect, obviously, in the way she's dealing with things, but if it wasn't for the influence of Bobby, I don't think she would have ever even considered this cockamamie plan.
No, indeed.
He has negatively influenced her in this way, and now, just like the way that she suffered the abuse of Leo, she is suffering almost at the hands of Bobby.
Yeah, not physical abuse, but manipulation at the very
emotional
least.
Manipulation. So, which is
Shelley.
That is
Shelley. You got terrible taste in men, Shelley.
That is in line with her character and in line with people that have been abused, which is you don't necessarily see the continuation of that. You don't necessarily see people continuing to abuse you and exploit you because you don't want to see that. So that's interesting.
Let's hope it pans out, but I don't know. I don't see how it's going to work. Something's got to give at some point, at the very least.
Well, yeah, and I suspect that he's really teasing at this, that Leo is not brain dead, and he's going to be coming back at some point to exact his revenge, and this will be something that Bobby and Shelley have to deal with. And
no doubt.
He moved.
I've got. So I've still got two big things left on my list, but two little asides. Leland seems to be, Benjamin's brought him back. Apparently, Jerry's gone to Tokyo to speak to the Japanese potential Japanese investors. Ben needs a bit of a hand, and he's like, Leland, are you good to go? So it seems like he is with his ideas of what to deal with the situation. However, clearly his mental state is still not there, as we see from his singing. Uh, well, that's you could say that's innocuous, but based on how we've seen with his singing and dancing
This
previously,
is how
we know
Leland is
that's
now.
yeah. And seemingly, and then also I'll show you this interesting little thing which quite easy to miss because it's very quick. When he's in Ben's office, he's looking at the taxidermy animal, and he's like takes a little bit of fluff off of it, and he's like, "Oh," and then he puts it in his pocket.
Right. Yeah.
And it's what is going through Leland's brain at half the time. I don't know at this point, but we'll have to wait and see. The other thing is we've very briefly seen Nadine and Ed. She's still regressed to her in her delusion of being a high schooler and still has her super strength. Aside from that, she seems to be doing very well. So good to check in with her briefly.
Poor Ed. Yeah. He's boy. If Nadine is going to escalate this into
Oh my God.
sex, I don't know that Ed's balls will
Gonna
survive.
survive.
Yeah.
We'll be thinking of you, Ed. We're praying for you, sir.
Well, yeah, we'll be praying for your balls, Ed.
Right. So all we've got is I've got left is the obviously the kind of the conclusion of the episode with the stuff with Philip Gerard, and also the all the stuff with Josie, and her cousin Jonathan. I guess we'll get into that. But was there any other little bits and pieces aside from those two big things?
No, I don't think so. The deal between Josie and Horn, obviously, Ben Horn is trying. Ben Horn, it seems to me, is walking a dangerous path right now. And
Right.
that is this almost balancing act between is it Nakamura? Is that his name or
Tajimura.
Najimura?
Taj.
Tajimura? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's not that, and it's nothing like racist. I'm horrible with names,
With names,
especially
yeah, I've noticed.
Japanese names that are all the same consonants but in different layouts. Yeah. So
Okay.
Tajimura, he gives him this $5 million check, I want to say, and then Ben is like, "Oh, Josie, here, you can take this." And now it seems like he's in this delicate balancing act where he may not come out of this unscathed if it all goes south.
Right.
But this is like his best guess at resolving the problem of dealing with all these criminal enterprises at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm still not really understanding Tajimura when he's coming in, what his whole purpose is in all of this. Just
Indeed.
like the introduction of Harold, it seems like a weird time to introduce a new character. Now you've got another vested entity who's making, big money overtures towards this land, and we don't know what his history is or why he's there or what he represents, or if he's even this character that's being presented. I mean, this all started with a potential food critic coming in that we don't think is this guy now, but now he's thoroughly entangled in the web of criminal deceit that's going on. What is this guy's interest and his story moving forward? And this is only further complicated by Ben and his actions now giving this check to Josie to pay her off and get her out of his hair. And at the same time, he doesn't even know that Josie's about to leave because she's been threatened by this cartel or whatever it is over there. She's got to go. So and then that leads to her closing scene with Truman, where Truman basically confesses his love, and she says "fuck you" and still leaves.
Mm,
And I mean, I get that. You know, it's
indeed.
if Josie has real feelings for Truman, then she's doing the right thing by protecting
Yeah,
him from the cartel.
absolutely.
But this is also still at the behest of her still being a part of this criminal enterprise and getting her money and
Right.
killing her husband and getting the payouts and selling the land and all that and getting the hell out of the country. So I'm sorry,
Mm,
Josie, you don't necessarily get to have feelings for the good guy that are complicated. And no, I'm sorry,
no.
suck it up, bitch. You can't have it both ways. You know,
No.
plus,
And like you said, yeah.
if this guy is really her cousin, which I don't think he is, maybe
No, no, no.
okay, then yeah, then he fucked her too, and that
Yeah.
was like her acquiescing, I guess, to the
Mm,
power that the cartel has over her.
yeah.
Um, sorry. These are the consequences of your actions, Josie. Face it, you don't have the luxury to
Yeah.
have feelings for Truman because, you're being compromised again, this time by your own foolishness.
Indeed.
So, yeah, so we'll see
But
what
yeah, that's
happens now
it's
with
yeah.
Josie.
But seemingly it's brought a resolution to all of that, unless there's going to be a fallout from the situation. You know,
Yeah, and I'm expecting
her.
that. I don't expect
Mm,
Josie to actually leave. There's
no.
something's gonna happen there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We'll see.
I did also find it absolutely hilarious. Pete buying Takamura the trying to buy him a drink and oh, you don't like musicals? Okay. How about a sake?
Do
No,
you want
I
a
don't like
drink?
sake.
No.
How about a cold
Want a
milk?
milk?
And apparently that hit the bill. So
That's Pete.
I'm
He's a good
almost,
guy, Pete.
yeah, and Pete is such a good natured
Mm,
character, and almost at this point comic relief.
yeah.
Um, I'd like to see where that's gonna go, if anywhere, or if that was just like a one-off type little comedy scene. Pete could be a unifying force just through sheer um, ineptitude or
Mm,
jokes or whatever else. He could, potentially bring two parties together in this, or he could be far more divisive through ineptitude. Um, but I'm interested to see what kind of a little influence Pete's now going to have unwittingly over that part of the storyline.
yeah, totally.
All right, so that's all I think I had on all of that.
Yeah.
And then we can move on to the biggest thing. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah. Philip Gerard.
Philip Gerard. So this is presented, at least what I gathered from it, as without the drug.
Mm,
See, that's a little bit conflicting, I think, because at
mm,
the end of the one episode, he takes the drug and he becomes this other thing that is now pursuing Bob.
mm.
And in this episode, they're going to give him the drug, but they withhold it, and he then
Yeah.
becomes this alternate persona.
It could be they've mixed up their own storyline in this regard.
But
It could be an oversight,
potentially, yeah,
or
that could be a plot
we could
oversight. But
interpret it as it's not necessarily. If we look at it, if we assume that this is not just some split personality, this is not just some extreme mental disorder, and according to the personality known as Mike, who spoke to Cooper in his dream, he claims to be a spirit, an inhabiting spirit.
right,
Obviously, we don't know exactly what that means, but if we assume that is correct, it may not be as simple as Philip Gerard was maybe aware of Mike's presence or not, and whatever this drug is, he uses it to kind of keep control of the situation, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's on or off. It's one or the other. He needs the drug or he doesn't. It's
Well,
it,
maybe that could be chalked up to when he was in the sheriff's office previously. He shot up the drug to try to control the appearance of Mike, but
but it
failed
didn't
or was
work.
too late.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because when he went to the bathroom to take the drugs, I was immediately after seeing Bob, a picture of Bob. So that could have seen Bob triggered Mike's persona coming
Okay.
forward, where he felt that rising, whether he's aware of Mike or not, knew that, oh, I better go take my drugs, seemingly succeeded or didn't before. But either way, Mike's personality came to the fore.
Right. So, I we didn't really necessarily have like the dual voice um existence here. Uh that was much more prominent with the one scene with Bob.
Yeah.
This was simply Gerard going into a deeper voice and a far
Yeah.
more even tone, which I mean you see with a lot of split personality characters. The voice is used to different, even like Batman and Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne speaks with a much higher and amiable voice, and Batman is very monotone and dark.
Yeah.
So I found that an very common but also excellent way for them to differentiate between these two personalities. Mike, he identifies himself as an inhabiting spirit, but he also uses the term parasite at another point. So maybe not describing himself, but in describing Bob, it seems like some kind of either biological or spiritual entity that has invaded the guy's body and takes over his mind and becomes this, at the very least, alternate personality of Bob, who then commits murders and lives off of fear and lives off of terror from the people that he victimizes and whatever else.
Yeah.
It seems to me, because Mike is making references to how they are kind of the same. So I want to assume at this point that they are essentially like the same kind of species, whatever they are.
Yeah.
And
That's seems like a fair assumption.
doing the same thing but for different reasons. It almost seems like Mike is purporting himself to be almost like a good version of whatever species of parasite this is inhabiting
the
bodies,
yeah.
Versus the bad version, which is Bob, and that is why he is pursuing him. He wants to kind of like end his existence or bring him down or stop him from doing what he's doing.
Totally.
So Mike could be seen as an ally, but what kind of threat, existential threat, does this species pose? Not only to the people of Twin Peaks, but anybody anywhere else in the world, where they can take over the bodies. And I didn't quite get the whole concept of cutting off the arm, what that did, aside from there was a tattoo there that wanted to be removed from the body or something.
Yeah, the Fire Walk with Me tattoo. They suggested that that represents something. He said that Bob was his familiar, presumably like a wizard or a magician would have, but then also described him as his partner. So then he goes on to say, until I saw the face of God. Now we don't know what that means to Mike exactly, but essentially he's saying, to my interpretation, and a lot of this I feel is open to interpretation and gets more so as we go along. Although there's certainly things that a consensus would agree to. Mike just used to be just like Bob. He was also into fear and terror and
Okay.
being a parasite. But then he saw the face of God, whatever that means, had a change of heart, so to speak, and then he's like regrets what he's done, and he's like, oh well, now I've changed my ways. Now it's on me to take responsibility for Bob, and I've got to do what I can to track him down and stop him if I can. If that is any of that is true, we'll have to wait and see. A couple other things he mentioned, as is being questioned. He says only the gifted and the damned are able to see Bob's true face. Um, uh, when Cooper says, "Where is he? Where is he? Is he? Where is he? Is he near?" Uh, Mike says, "Yeah, he's been near for the past He's been near for 40 years." Um, and then when questioned as to where he is, he Mike maybe doesn't realize what he's referring to because if he is this weird spirit entity, he doesn't who takes over a human host to interact with the physical realm. He may not get the full concept of what a hotel is, let alone specific locations. But he clearly describes the Great Northern
Right.
as the place where Bob may have been for the past 40 years. And then obviously that leaves us there. So that's the clue he's left them with.
Well, there's one phrase that Mike uttered there that caught my
Mm,
attention, and that is "through darkness of future past," which is part of this
mm,
this phrase, this series of words relating to that.
mm,
That's got the fire walk with me, uh,
yeah.
uh, between two worlds. Um, so this, I hate to say it, but one of the explanations that ran through my head previously was that there's some kind of time travel involved here, and
Mm,
and that seems to me to indicate that that is a more prominent explanation here. There is definitely
mm,
some people from either the past or the future who are at this point in time in Twin Peaks, possibly in this form of spirits inhabiting other people's bodies as parasites or whatever like that. Um, who are Mike and Bob? What do they
mm,
represent? Are they humans that have been altered into some other kind of form and are now here in this form? Are they aliens? Are they, subhuman parasites or something like that? We don't know. But there are too many references to
mm,
time, to space, to the even this common phrase "fire walk with me" that clearly is going to be much better explained by the end of season 2 and into the movie as
mm.
to what their relevance to our current timeline and our paradigm of humanity is, and how they are to interact with us. um, but I definitely see that unfolding more and more, as there's almost like an ebb and flow with David Lynch's storylines here, where you start leaning towards one thing and then you're like, no, that's
Yeah.
not quite working anymore, and now we're going over here,
Right.
you know. Um, but that's been a guiding theme throughout the whole thing, is that there's little
Mm,
snippets talking about time, and that there's not quite um, whatever we are dealing with here is out of time. It's
right.
not their normal time where they would naturally exist. They are here
Mm,
at this moment in Twin Peaks because of some event, and
right.
we have to figure out all of that. But that leads to the concept, I think, that if they are out of time and naturally, then they are also able to either go back, or as a resolution to set things right, or we're going to use that against them in some way.
Yeah.
You don't belong here, you're out of time, so let's try to resolve this by either getting you back or destroying you or getting you out of our time at the very least.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I honestly can't help but think that whoever Mike and Bob are, they are definitely connected to certain main characters right now.
Hmm.
So we'll have to see if that thought of mine pans out, or if David Lynch has completely obliterated every sense of reason power that I have with his
Hmm.
convoluted storylines.
We shall have to see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else, Scotty? I think that's everything I had for
No,
this
that's
episode.
all I have for this episode. So,
Excellent. I apologize again, gentlemen. I've got to run away for a minute. I'm terrible. I'll be as quick as I can, and we'll get right back on the next episode. One sec.
all right. See you in a bit.
There we go, Scotty. Um,
Terrible.
big.
I don't want to see anymore.
um, obviously, the big reveal being the host to the possessing spirit of Bob, whatever this entity is actually Leland Palmer. I'll ask you in a bit when we get into that a bit, but it seemed like the episode was almost up until that point, uh, wanting you to maybe leading to believe that it might have been Benjamin Horn. But yeah, do you want to deal with all that at the start, or should you save that to the end and tidy up the other little bits first? Either
Well, I
way.
mean, they kind of started the episode with that. This information from Mike inhabiting the body of Gerard and Cooper. I find it kind of interesting. I mean, clearly this was like just one last fuck you. You think you had figured it out with Ben
Mm.
Horn from David Lynch before we actually get to the real reveal.
Mm.
Um, you know, one last spout of misdirection to keep you
Yeah,
guessing.
kind of himself.
Yeah, but I found it interesting, and I, as soon as we were getting to that point, and I realized what was going on, I'm going back in my mind and thinking the scene in which he's sitting in Mike Gerard is sitting in the lobby and saying no,
Mm.
not this person, not this person. He's focusing the entire time as part of that misdirection on Ben Horn walking towards the lobby, and
Mm.
then suddenly Mike going into a fit,
Mm.
and then the whole pointing without chemicals thing. Obviously, that's clear, but I was trying to think back. Was Leland in the room
Mm.
in that scene? And I couldn't remember that, or it was so well hidden in plain sight that I'd have to go back and
Mm.
see it again.
There was a lot going on. There was a lot
Right.
of people.
But I mean, the point that you were led to was that Ben was entering the room, and it
Mm.
was just at that moment that he did that. But I couldn't recall seeing Leland in the room at all.
No,
So he
no,
must have
no.
been so well hidden in plain sight that
Yeah,
it was an extremely effective ruse.
yeah. Or it's not actually related. It seemed to be for Gerard or slash Mike that just assisting in that capacity seemed to be taking its toll on him, and maybe he just reached his limit anyway, and it's just
That
a massive coincidence
that's
that
that's true. I mean, it could have been, yeah, like Mike just was of no help at all.
Mm.
And it, or say because he was focusing on like the balls bouncing,
Yeah.
which seemed to me to be a really fucking stupid thing for the police to allow going on
Yeah.
at this time when they're trying to identify a killer. Oh, we'll
Yeah.
just have these sailors over there and a whole bunch of people just bouncing balls in the lobby and making a whole bunch of noise, you know. And
Only in Twin
clearly that
Peaks.
was getting to Mike.
Yeah.
It
Definitely.
was
Definitely it
at
was.
the very least degrading his ability to be
Mm.
there and recognize things and pass along information.
Yeah.
So I maybe Leland wasn't there. I really would have
Yeah.
to go back and watch the scene very closely to see if
Mm.
that's the
Maybe he
case.
was. Yeah.
Um, but either way, okay.
Mm.
Thank you, David Lynch, for that last little bit of fuck you. And um, Ben Horn. Now, I before we get on to that part of it, it seems to me that Ben, in his capacity to be, I would say, like the secondary evil force in the
Mm.
storyline. He's behind the entire criminal organization. He's behind the prostitution ring, the drugs, all of that. So clearly he's not the most evil force in this, but he is, without a doubt,
Mm.
being portrayed as one of the main villains. His um, caterwauling, for lack of a better term, when he's being arrested,
Yeah.
it's rather interesting. You know, they come in and they assemble there and they're like, okay, we're going to arrest you for the murder of Laura Palmer, or at the very least bring you in for questioning to
Mm.
that point. And he just isn't having it, and actually tries to make like a good old escape. And yeah, like what did you think? They weren't going to catch you walking out the door calmly to go get a sandwich? You know, clearly he's got a screw loose in that regard. But
Yeah.
you know, and then his struggle. Okay, so I could see that maybe, but it's also like, what did you expect, Ben? You know,
Yeah.
did
He's
you think this criminal activity was maybe never going to bite you in the ass? You know, or are you that
he
egotistical? Or
he seems that arrogant that you know, it's almost like the whole thing's a game to him, and he's
yeah,
like the mastermind, and you know, challenges are thrown his way, but well, he will defeat them because he's Benjamin Horn.
right,
Um, you know, the local police enforcement, you know, law enforcement, but they're beneath even his, you know, given any recognition to. They're not going to catch him. You know, what they're going to do
right.
about it? You
And
know, I'm this.
I guess I could see that at the, you know, he is that egotistical.
Mm,
Um, you know, nobody matters to Ben Horn except for Ben
mm,
Horn. Not even his daughter. His daughter is a big thorn in his side that he
mm,
probably at this point would not hesitate to take out if he
mm,
can't control her. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're not playing against the Keystone Cops here. You can't just waltz out the door and make a
mm.
clean getaway. They've got your number here, Ben, even if it's the wrong number. You
Yeah,
know, don't be a child about this. Um,
yeah. I
so in
wonder
any
if part
case,
of it was just to lead you to lead you to believe right up until the very last second that you know, because if he was guilty, he may react like that. Whereas you think if he wasn't of you know the murder of Laura, that he'd just be like, okay, okay, roll his
no,
eyes, let's get this over with.
but quite the opposite, though.
Mm,
When I saw Ben Horn's reaction to them trying to arrest him, it was a crack in the story
mm,
there for me, a little bit of a crack, because I'm like,
mm,
wait a second, why is he reacting like this if he's actually the killer? Okay, so
mm.
then they go into, but it didn't click in my head. So then they go into the sheriff's office, and Log Lady just happens to be there,
Mm,
and she's indifferent, it seems, to Ben's appearance.
Yeah,
And
right.
she's like, I mean, she didn't say it, but in so
Mm,
many words, it sounded like, there's shit going down at the Roadhouse. We need to be there.
yeah.
Okay. So that would be a second crack. But again, it didn't connect because I'm just not
Mm,
fast enough with that sort of thing. Um, Everything that we saw prior to this, I would say, at the end of last episode and the beginning of this first episode was leading you to believe that Ben is, and I put in as much in the chat, that Ben was the host. And I could
mm,
see that because it all fits. Like you go and you say, who among the people that we have seen, the characters that we have seen, is the most likely host for Bob at this point? Why not the most evil person in Twin
yeah.
Peaks? And that would fit his personality. And we could also see, like maybe how an evil entity parasite that is taking over a body might be attracted to a mind like Ben Horn's,
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and that all leads you in that direction, and then suddenly you're kind of torn away from that with these images of the mom, Sarah, crawling on the
Mm,
floor, and the needle skipping on the record and all of this other stuff.
mm,
Well, okay, what is going on? In other words, it's almost like, to me, David Lynch created a mini mystery within this episode that you
mm,
didn't see until Leland
yeah.
was presented as this evil force.
Mm,
Which even then you didn't even see that until it kind of like panned up from the phonograph to see him in the mirror. You get
yeah.
an inkling, you get an idea that, well, maybe it's Leland in the house that's causing pain to Sarah at this moment, and we don't know exactly
Mm,
what's going on. But you know that to me is like the reveal point. You see
yeah.
Leland in the mirror checking his tie and whatever else, and then it starts to become clear exactly what the misdirection was and
Mm,
how it's resolving itself. But yeah, just interesting, and I got to give him credit. David Lynch knows what he's doing.
yeah.
He knows, and the writers that he had working for him, producing this complex web and showing you exactly what you need to know at the right moment to
Mm,
keep you guessing, to keep the story moving along, and you know managing this entire tangled web. So I got to give him credit. He did an excellent job with
yeah.
that. And
I will mention an aside to that, outside of the plot. Um, Apparently, this is what I'd read. And I don't know the reason for this. Maybe the second season wasn't hitting the rating numbers, wherever. But apparently the TV company who were producing the show, they pressured Lynch and Frost into the reveal of Laura's killer beyond just the fact that it was this Bob entity, i.e., who is Bob? Bob is Leland Palmer. Apparently, they didn't want to do that. This what they felt was this early on in this
really,
series. Yeah, even to the point of dragging it out indefinitely. Whether that would be a good thing or not, and who knows who was in the right or wrong. But that is what I've heard. But it's history now. It is what it is, for better or worse. I guess maybe Lynch saw it as this was the overall overarching main mystery of the series, and within a mystery series, that's the one he wanted to preserve for as long as possible. But for whatever the circumstances were, they had to give in to the pressure. Um, I can only assume it would be the ratings that would bring people back into it. And it was fantastic. I felt it was a fantastic episode. The tension was
yeah.
wonderful, but
But
yeah, we get that reveal.
to
So, oh,
to
go ahead.
that point, let me just say this, because I mean, I might have to like see what the series would have been if Lynch had been able to develop it the way he wanted, instead of
Mm,
being if that's true, he was pressured into it by the TV execs. But that being said, I'm apt to say that the way this was laid out
Mm.
and as presented here, what it ultimately ended up being, it sounds personally much better than what you just described of that
Right,
maybe not
yeah.
being
Yeah.
revealed until the end of season 2 or never being revealed indefinitely, however
Yeah.
that might have
It,
played out. This
yeah, it's
this worked out much better in my opinion.
yeah, it's possible he looks back on it now and he's like thankful that he
Yeah.
was put under that pressure. Because you've alluded to like one good example of the character of Harold Smith. Um, while Lynch and Frost had like an overall idea of what they wanted the story to be overall, it's very obvious they have other writers in doing the specific episodes, and they are essentially making it up as they go along. So
Right.
for that, I feel they're not doing too badly. But yeah, I think it, whether it's too early or delayed, it would have been. I feel it would have been ridiculous if we'd never got the Bob Leland Palmer connection ever revealed ever. That would have been, or
Right.
if it was just the final thing that happened ever, you'd be like, oh, okay, and then now the end. You don't want to see the
S-
consequence of that, the results of that.
Right. Right. So the ultimate arbiter of what is
Mm,
going to prove that, whether or not the timing of the reveal of this in now
mm,
what season 2 episode 7, and we've still got
mm.
approximately what 14 episodes left, 15.
Uh, yeah,
I think because I think there's 22 in season 2, and then the
yeah,
movie. um so
indeed.
so so the arbiter of whether or not that is going to be a good decision is now what he does with those remaining episodes. So it
Mm,
almost seems like, okay, what do we have? 8 episodes in season 1, 22 episodes in season 2. So we are now
at
15
exactly the
episodes
halfway
in
point. Yeah,
total with 14 or 15 episodes left. So we're
yeah,
literally, if you take seasons 1 and 2 as one whole thing, halfway.
yeah.
So at this point we could assume, I think rightly so, that Leland being inhabited by the spirit of Bob is not only responsible for the murder of his daughter Laura, but also the murder of the previous girl from elsewhere in the state.
Yeah,
Would have
Teresa
been
Banks. Yeah.
Ronette, Teresa Banks. Thank
Mm,
you, Munchin or Urchins, um, and potentially some other things going on that have not yet been revealed or have been mentioned but not necessarily properly connected, or
mm,
the connection's not even remotely clear. If we are going to assume that, which I think is a reasonable assumption at this point, then it is um, beholding to David Lynch to then take what remains now. We're essentially at the halfway point in this part of the storyline to essentially use the time that is remaining in the second half to not only fill out the storyline that has been created thus far, but now maximizing it, adding to it, and putting in whole new levels that you
mm,
never even conceived. I actually expect at this point now that the web is going to get even more complicated, and he's going to add things that we have never seen or even considered after the first 14 episodes,
mm.
what this storyline is capable of. And yet the clues were there all along because that's how he operates, and he puts the little details in
Mm.
here and there all along. So that is what I would hope from what I have seen thus far of the way David Lynch operates is now it's going to really ramp up and get even more
Mm.
complex as he adds the remaining layers that he has at his disposal to
Yeah,
completely flesh out the storyline before coming to the general resolution that we would expect. So
yeah,
hopefully he's not going to get too far into the weeds, because I mean it already is
Mm.
fairly convoluted, but just just for from him being able to do this as he has done with the timing of the whole situation and in regards to just how long the series is in
Mm.
general, he's brought main resolution, not full resolution, but a
Mm.
majority of resolution to the main part of the mystery.
Yeah.
Now we know who is responsible. Okay,
Yeah.
we may not have justice. We may not have
Mm.
answers for all of the questions and all of the sticking points that you know how is this connected and who and why and what was the whole purpose all along, but we've got enough of a serious foundation as a launching point for what is to come next, which I
Mm.
mean it took him long enough, I think,
Yeah.
to build up to that point. And even in its own right, it feels like, how do I put this? This is season long or series long story arc long
Mm.
before any other series did that. We previously spoke
Yeah.
about Walking Dead, and
Mm.
yeah, one of the favorites that I like to use as an example is Star Trek Enterprise. We talk about on my other
Mm.
podcast there the series of Star Trek Enterprise that most people don't like for a couple of different
Mm.
reasons. Season 3 in Enterprise was the first time we had seen a true season long story arc in Star Trek.
Oh,
And
interesting.
just in general, there wasn't a lot back in the 90s of television series that had season long story arcs.
Mm.
Let alone
Absolutely.
so in my mind, I mean almost all of it was episodic. You look at the X
Yeah.
Files,
Mm.
all of it was episodic aside from the general overreaching
Yeah.
series story arc of what does the government know about aliens?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the majority of it was episodic, and there was always a
Yeah.
resolution at the end of the episode, and then we move on. Almost all other television series at that time were like that, except for maybe mini series or made for TV movies or things like that. So I think David Lynch was really ahead of his time because now we see that
Right.
all the time. You see Game of Thrones, or you
Yeah.
see, any of these modern stories. This is exactly what they'll do. They'll do a 10 episode season, and it's the same story across all 10 episodes.
Mm.
So he was doing this back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And not only was he doing it and doing it well, but he, man, the way I'm trying to articulate what's in my head here. We're seeing we're seeing not only a series long story arc, but we're also seeing now the beginning of um a whole new level of what the story is capable of
Mm.
after 14 episodes.
Yeah.
It's like Lynch going, "Oh, you liked all of that before that? Well, guess what the fuck I have for you next?"
Yeah.
You know. Um,
That was just the entrees. Main
yeah,
course
it's
is on the
like
tray.
and now we're getting onto the main course here. Interesting to me that it literally took him 14-hour episodes to get to the main course.
Yeah.
And that is not what I expected at all from this series. Like
Mm.
I expect, especially looking at like number of episodes. Okay, 8 in the first season, 22 in the second. Okay, maybe there's something going on with TV execs and whatever else. No, we're seeing the long play that
Mm.
David Lynch had designed in the storyline from the beginning,
Yeah.
and his writers and how they laid it out, which is, in my opinion, the mark of a great entertainment
Mm.
producer across any type of genre is
Yeah.
you have a concept, and I try to do this myself. is you have a concept of exactly what the story looks like from beginning to end before you even start production.
Yeah.
You know how it's going to start, how it's going to end, everything that comes in the middle, all the twists and turns, when it's going to be, and the effect that it's going to have on the people that are watching it
Yeah.
before you even begin production. And it seems like he, at the very least, had that generally well done,
Yeah.
and then was able to put that maybe even to better practice when he actually started production, whether or not TV execs were pressuring him into doing this or that. It doesn't matter. He knew exactly what
Mm.
he was doing from the get go, and
Mm.
when it was going to happen and what effect it would have.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Well, if
kudos.
you appreciate that, listen, let me just say the game is far longer than you think.
But wait, there's
Yeah,
more.
there's more. Yeah, it's exactly like that, Scott. Which I personally love, and there are some critics of it being the original run or the whole uh fiction taken as is in its entirety are not fans of that. They think that
Yeah,
is they think it's overwrought and silly and convoluted, and that's
that's
perfect. That's reasonable.
small-minded peons. Not
Yeah.
worthy of.
Well, just literally in the sense that was it yeah, it was t- yeah, 25 years after the end of season 2 we get season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um and there may be reasons to believe that was planned. Um you'll have to wait and see more on that, but
so
but
so
I mean,
so David Lynch is taking his long game story writing and storytelling style and applying it to his entire life. And hopefully he
essentially
doesn't
he's
die in along the way.
right. He's either, whether you like him, like his art, or you don't. He's either a madman or a genius, or both.
Well, that's like, what that reminds me of in a far more generic sense is George Lucas, who
Mm,
started in the late 70s with episode 4. And he's like, "Oh yeah,
yeah,
it'll be fine. We'll do episode 4, 5 and 6 first.
yeah.
Then 20 years later we'll go back and do episodes 1, 2 and 3." And that's, what was the genius of Lucas at the time. No, no,
Mm.
David Lynch blows that out of the water. You know, it's funny that it's
uh,
not nearly as well known.
oh
At least
yeah.
because I mean I've heard of Twin Peaks, but I didn't know. Like, I saw all of the hubbub that was surrounding the release of season 3. I didn't know what it
Okay.
was. Like, I saw the
You're like, oh,
commercials and I saw, this and
yeah.
that, and I'm like, oh, that maybe looks a little bit interesting. I'll check it out. But
Mm,
I never did, and I'd never heard of it
no.
before.
Mm,
So
yes. It's it's curious.
yeah,
It flies flies under the radar a little bit, but once it's got its hooks in you, then, for example, Urchin's a great example. It's like, and so other people, you mention it, you're like, oh, Twin Peaks, so they're people are either never heard of it, or they know the name but know absolutely nothing about it,
right.
or that tiny minority who are like, oh my god, yeah, awesome. um,
It's
but
truly
yeah,
got its
I'm
own little
excited
cult
for us.
following.
Indeed, indeed. But I'm excited for what's to come. So yeah, back to the contents of the episode. I guess we were dwelling on
Yeah.
the reveal and Leland, so we might as well wrap that up. Um, so obviously we do have the big reveal that this we know that it was shown to us early on that Laura Palmer's murderer was someone called Bob, uh, who we've now recently discovered is some kind of spirit entity. That's the best explanation we have at the moment. So no doubt we'll get more information about that later. And that this spirit entity has actually possessed Leland Palmer. Now I feel if we look back about a few episodes, there's reason to believe that Leland, at least for the most part, was completely unaware that he was possessed,
Yes.
unlike say Philip Gerard was. Because if he was aware, and somehow complicit with Bob's actions, he would not be. There was several, like when he saw the picture of Bob, he said, "Oh, I know this man." He went to the sheriff's department. He wouldn't have done that if he was trying to hide. And we may get more on that later on, but we'll have to wait and see. What exactly happened to Sarah Palmer? All we saw her do was crawl down the stairs, say Leland, and then pass out on the living room floor. Did he do something to her? It seems likely, or maybe it was more a case that Bob did something to her.
Right.
And if we go to Laura's diary, where at this point we were still led to believe that possibly Bob was Benjamin Horne. She says in her secret diary she was aware of the existence of Bob. He'd been abusing her for years. Bob was a friend of her father's, which makes sense. That kind of suggests that Laura herself was unaware that she was aware of the reality of Bob, but not that necessarily Bob was possessing her father. More on that later, no doubt. And of course, then the other thing she mentioned about someday I'm going to tell everybody about Benjamin Horne. That's obviously when it's still leading us to believe
Right.
that that red herring of Ben Horne there. But yeah, so obviously, sorry, going back, we have that main reveal, but we have the new mystery, of course, is what the bloody hell is Bob, and how, if possible, can he be brought to justice?
And why is
because
the hospital
he's the
food
true
so
killer.
bad?
Yeah, that's still to be found out. Yeah. What else? Yeah, of course. Harold Smith wrapped up. He committed suicide. He felt badly enough. You called it.
I called that.
Not suicide, but you
I
knew
don't think we're
he'd
gonna
served
see
his
much more
purpose.
from Harold very next episode. Dead. Thank you,
Yeah,
Harold,
immediately at the
for
start.
confirming I am not an idiot.
Yeah, he served his purpose. Bless him. I feel bad for him,
Right.
but also he's a bit crazy. Not that means he should die, but he seemed to be like he was possibly a danger to other people.
Well,
Potentially.
let's talk a little bit about that, because we've got Donna sitting with James in the bar there, and Donna's perception of Harold was just that he was a troubled soul, and that she almost caused his death by intruding on him way too much. That, in her pursuit of just trying to find out what happened to Laura and the diary, and then she's acting in her interest, and she just intruded upon Harold so much that he snapped. Okay, well, like I said previously, he seems to be like the run-of-the-mill psychopath, which ended up meaning that he was not able to cope with that. So in a way, Donna did cause his suicide. Like, she was the catalyst for Harold just going, fuck this shit, I'm out. I can't handle it anymore, right? Even more so, I found it rather interesting that Harold kind of destroyed his own apartment prior.
Yeah.
I actually found myself thinking, is this actually a suicide, or did somebody go in there and completely obliterate his apartment, maybe looking for something, or that isn't the secret diary because that was left, and then made it look like a suicide? But I'm pretty sure now, it's exactly what it appeared to be. He couldn't handle not only the intrusion but also the betrayal.
Yeah.
He was and this actually kind of speaks to me personally, because I've been burned in my life, and it's like you don't want to let anybody in because of the overwhelming potential for hurt and harm, so you keep everybody at a distance. And then when Harold goes to let somebody in, like he let Laura in, then he's betrayed by that person, or at least that's how he perceives it.
Yeah.
And it then becomes too much for him to handle. So yeah, Donna is at the very least the catalyst, if not at fault for that, and maybe she should have seen that in Harold, that he just was not stable enough to handle what her presence and actions did to him.
Yeah.
So, I don't know,
She
but
well, she felt guilty about it. I
yeah,
think that's just testament to Donna being a good person, but
yeah. At
you know,
least she recognizes it after the fact.
yeah,
She's good-hearted enough to recognize the kind of impact that she had on him.
yeah. Well, let's hope she learnt a lesson. Uh, that's all side stuff. Yeah, and then of course going back to the main mystery, Margaret directs Cooper to the Roadhouse because presumably to receive the vision of the giant, but the only message he has is "It is happening again."
Yeah, not much Cooper can do from the Roadhouse.
No, that's the thing. So it's nice he got the message, but if it's it seems like a little bit too little, too late kind of thing.
And then that fucking old guy at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, interesting character.
Mm.
Completely
I
useless. Thanks for your
yeah.
condolences.
Uh,
You didn't help me when I was shot. You're not really helping me now.
mm,
Um, Here is the thing about that entire scene that still bothers me, so to speak.
mm.
One, the impression that we got uh, from the log lady, no less, is that the owls are at the roadhouse. Okay,
Indeed.
who are the owls and what are they doing? We don't
Yeah.
know specifically, but we are kind of led to believe that the owls in this particular case are the tall man
Mm.
and the ancient waiter,
Yeah.
because there's clearly something off about that guy. At least the
Mm.
tall man is, the tall man, and he's weird and obviously
Mm.
some kind of supernatural presence, but the waiter is just way too weird to not be involved with that.
Right.
So
And also the only times we've not the only times, two times we've seen the giant, the waiter has also been there. Two out of the three times. So I mean
that's
that could be
true.
coincidence.
So it kind of, but
And
it's
in fact the only
interesting.
times we've seen that waiter guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just kind of interesting, the the proposition of how the characters are presented and in what locations. Why did we
Mm.
have to go to the Roadhouse with the
Yeah, indeed.
music and the band and the feel and the tones and the colors and the lighting, just to have the tall man appear to Cooper
Right.
and deliver the message that it is happening again? Okay, well, we understand that something is happening, and then more pointedly at the end of that, the old man coming over and essentially telling him, well, it was happening again, but now it's over and you lost. Sorry that, things didn't, you weren't able to stop it, or whatever the case. um Log Lady's presence to me is problematic, that
Mm.
she is able to know certain things because she sees patterns in her craziness, or she has ethereal sense, or sixth sense or whatever, and she's directing Cooper to the roadhouses, which is not where he needs to be.
No.
So he's out of the way. He's in a place where, excuse me, he can be given the message that something is happening. He even, kind of put that part of it together in the police station before they even left.
Mm.
Something is
Yeah, yeah.
happening, isn't it? And yes, something is happening, but he's in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So what is informing Log Lady to take Cooper to the wrong place at the wrong time?
Mm.
And um okay, so he gets the message from the tall man, whatever the tall man his role in all of this is, but Cooper can't do anything about it where he is. He
No.
now, instead of being 2 steps ahead, he's 3 steps behind.
Mm.
And now he's struggling to put all the pieces together again. He thought he had it with Ben Horn, and now no, you're so far behind that you're looking at it from the wrong angle now. You
Will
know,
he ever catch up?
yeah, and that's the case. I mean, that's really the crux of the situation, because the story of Twin
Mm.
Peaks is the story of Cooper solving the mystery, and he's had a serious setback in this episode
Mm.
where he is no longer on the leading edge of the trail figuring it out. He is not only been misdirected along with the audience, is he has been set on the wrong path by
Mm.
other forces. So that's why I say the Log Lady to me is problematic. At the very least, she's an unwitting conduit of feeding information to Cooper that is not helping him.
No.
So
I guess the question is that intentional,
yeah,
or is there just been some kind of breakdown in communication?
or just bad luck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is yeah,
Easily.
is he suffering bad luck at this point? And
Mm.
okay, there's more shit that we got to overcome in order to actually be back on the right path.
Mm.
Um, so let's tie in at this point the clear fact that Bobby and Donna both felt in a sixth sense kind of manner
Mm.
the that something was happening, which ended up to be the murder of Maddie, or at least the attack of Maddie. I'm gonna assume at this point that Maddie is dead.
Yeah.
Um, they sensed it. It was clear
Mm.
in the bar that they had, and Donna's sitting there crying, and James doesn't know what to make of it. He comes over to try to console her. I mean, in that moment when I'm seeing Donna react like that, I'm thinking in my head, imagine being in James's position, and you're
Yeah.
sitting there and you're making amends with your girlfriend, and you're going, she's singing these love song words to you, and then she just
Yeah.
bursts out into tears, and you're like, what the fuck? And you go over there to give her
Yeah.
a hug. you know Imagine being in James' position from that, because he does not seem to be aware of this. But both Bobby and Donna now have some kind of much strengthened connection to,
Mm.
just like Cooper does,
Yeah.
this connection to something is happening. We know because this is
Yeah.
the event that's unfolding at the other location. Mike, or Bob taking over Leland to murder Maddie, and they feel it, and they have this otherworldly connection to knowing what's going on, but not necessarily having the answers to why and how and what and all that. So
Yeah.
that to me seems kind of interesting. I'd also be apt to believe, although we didn't have any indication of it, that Audrey is the same way.
Mm.
I think at some point they're going to add that into the mix, that Audrey also has whatever this sixth sense is, to sense various things, to be able to maybe communicate telepathically in a fashion with Cooper. You know, some of these things that we've been privy to before, but weren't necessarily related to what's going on at the moment.
Mm.
So clearly they're leading you down that path, that there is some
Mm.
kind of interconnected, maybe telepathic web between these specific individuals, and maybe that's going to be, a path for them to resolve it at the end. That's going to be a way for them to, utilize it as a power to help them in defeating the evil, or whatever the case. And it seems to me like the Roadhouse was only used as this central location for that happening,
Yeah,
that course of action as a counterpoint to what was happening in Leland's house.
yeah, indeed.
If that makes sense. I
Yeah, no, that does make sense.
don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah, it was interesting though. I think they did a very good job with that scene, um, m- making you. It's almost like as the viewer, you're there with Donna and Bobby, and who are with them lost in this crowd of people who are completely oblivious. It's interesting though that they those two obviously if we're putting Cooper and say Margaret aside, um everyone else was unaware, but they like obviously Donna was crying and Bobby he was just kind of looking around like he's lost. He was like he felt that something wasn't right.
But he
And
has
he's
no clue
like,
what to make of it.
yeah, he felt that something was off. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what the fallout of all of this is, because of course we know that uh Bob and is inhabiting Leland. Nobody else does at this point. Um, we only us the viewer. Um, Couple
Yes.
of little things not related to the overall mystery in this episode. Good to see Nadine again, still very healthy, still very crazy. Ed still doesn't know what the hell to do.
I got
Uh,
a I got a sense from Ed though
yeah,
that he is starting to become turned on by Super Nadine, the idea of
you reckon?
a superhero wife that's batshit crazy.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I don't know. The way he reacted to that kiss was kind of like
yeah. He's like, hang on a minute.
he's a little bit into it now.
Yeah, maybe we shall see. I really like the scene just before that with Shelley and Norma. I thought that was wonderful. Obviously, Shelley's very upset about her own situation, but she's more so upset that she feels like she's got to quit her job.
Yeah.
But yeah, very touching scene. It almost felt like Norma was because obviously she's a Shelley's boss, but also they're very good friends. But it almost felt like she was fulfilling either a big sister role or even a motherly like role to Shelley. Um, but yeah, very touching and understanding of her
And it
to
and it speaks very well of their relationship.
yeah,
Like
yeah, definitely.
so because I mean the last we saw Hank, he was being uh abducted basically
Mm,
by
wasn't he?
Jean. So
Yeah, yeah,
Hank obviously didn't appear in this episode, and during that scene I found myself wondering if Norma even if Norma is aware at this point that Hank is not going to be there anytime soon for whatever reason,
yeah.
he's been abducted by Jean. He's not in the picture at the moment. Is Norma aware of what's going on with Hank? Doesn't seem like it, but she should be at least aware of his, his non-presence. Um,
Mm,
and despite that, despite maybe Norma's mixed feelings about Hank and if she can trust him or not, and I felt myself going, well, if I was in Norma's position at this point, obviously it's not necessarily related to what's going on with Shelley, but I would have a little bit of apprehension about the
mm.
fact that Hank didn't show up for work, or
Yeah,
didn't show up at all. Where is Hank right now? Um,
yeah.
and they didn't touch on that aspect of the story
No.
at all, and instead focused on Shelley and Norma's relationship and how they view each other as mother daughter or sister sister, and in their kind kindness aspects, the personality of kindness that they both have, they will take care of each other no matter
Mm,
what happens. They've got each other's back. And Norma being in the position of running the diner. It says, of course you will you can not only take off as much time as you need to handle your shit, but you'll also have a position here anytime you're ready to come back.
Yeah.
So, they're
Yeah.
going to take care of each other, and their relationship has been strengthened by that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, I think as Urchin's comments say, I agree. Urchin's Norma is she's wonderful. We also got Bobby chasing what he felt was a clue from Leo in his almost catatonic state about his new shoes. Um, Coincidence? He turned in some boots for repair previously. He went to pick them up and he
Yep.
finds a hidden cassette tape inside them.
Yep. That's
Interesting
it.
to find out what is on that tape.
It's Laura Palmer's secret diary.
Double secret diary. It may be. It may be. And the final thing I have, of course, is the reveal that Tajimura is actually Catherine.
That
Did
bitch.
you did you did you see that coming at all, Scotty? Or...
Um, it's not that I saw it coming, because I didn't. Like, I just, it wasn't there. It didn't connect in my head, that
Mm,
possibility. So that's, I guess, my failing in maybe recognizing the very few clues that were there. It wasn't a lot
no,
to go on, but
there
there
wasn't.
were a
Well,
few
I
clues here
mean,
and
if it makes you feel better, I didn't get it on the first viewing of the show, so
there. But it's like, okay, so clearly that clears up who the fuck this person is and why
mm,
they're there and what's going on. Probably also means that the check that Ben has
mm,
handed to Josie is fake or just bullshit.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
the the interesting thing though is, um, what is Catherine on about? Is
yeah,
she's trying to, like, manipulate Ben Horn into giving her the land by giving him a fake check or something? Catherine does not have five
yeah.
million dollars.
No, no, it doesn't make sense, and of course we have the presumed inconsistency because I don't know what kind of connections Catherine has outside of her own dealings with the people in Twin Peaks. Like any other, like, say, business or criminal connections,
Yeah,
I assume she had access to were all through Benjamin. I assumed, um, but not only, I assume her motive, her goal, is to at the very least undermine Ben, get revenge, so to speak. Um, but these inconsistencies could be the fact that she has an actual Japanese assistant.
right.
So is that some random guy she's hired to go along with her ruse? I don't know. And of course, Jerry's over in Japan, checking out the legitimacy of this business interest, which apparently seems legitimate. So does Catherine actually have connections in Japan? Uh, who knows? I don't.
Plot
Will it be
twist.
addressed? I don't know. Yeah.
Plot twist. Catherine is the person that Josie's cousin, quote unquote, is referring to the entire time. She owns the entire Japanese
Mm.
operation. Yeah, honestly, Catherine
Yeah.
isn't
Well,
smart enough for this. Um,
right.
and although I gotta say that that was a fantastic ploy, so to speak.
Mm.
Whatever Catherine is
Yeah.
at, whatever she's on about, even if it doesn't pan out, that was a great way to bring her back into the story. Is her pretending to be this Japanese businessman, and the hilarious thing is Pete in the last episode offering to buy the Japanese businessman a drink, and it's Catherine all along, and
Yeah.
what Catherine has to go to keep a straight face in that,
Yeah.
dealing with Pete. Okay, great.
Right.
And then we come to this scene where, you know, she's in the dark and Pete's in the kitchen, and he just goes up and kisses him.
Yeah.
and you're like, what the fuck is this shit? You know, and all of a sudden the reveal that it's Catherine and Pete responding and reacting the way you would entirely expect good-hearted Pete to do so, just laughing it off like you look terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a fantastic scene and well done. Um, and a great way to bring Catherine back into the storyline because
Right.
you knew she wasn't dead. There was no body
Yeah.
found. All the evil people are like, "Yeah, she's dead." No, she's not, motherfucker. You know.
Mm.
So kudos to that and all that. But no, I didn't see it was her at all because I was so
No.
focused on who is this mysterious person and what are they
Yeah.
representing, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so then we get to that point that it's actually Catherine, and it's like, David Lynch, you motherfucker, you did it again.
Yeah. He has a habit of doing that.
Yeah,
It's interesting now because she's almost aligned against the bad guys. So I wonder if there's a path to Catherine joining the forces of good in a
yes, I
way.
could easily see that at this point. Not necessarily like a redemption path for her, but
Mm,
like she was such a strong, how do I want to say, she was an extremely, or at least presented as an extremely strong-willed individual at the beginning,
mm,
and then maybe that
yeah.
came off as she was evil, but and I
Mm,
remember feeling that too. But I mean,
yeah.
that's happened so many times in this series where you get a perception of somebody right off the bat, and that turns out to be completely false, or it goes through
Mm,
multiple convoluted turns. So clearly, he's doing that with her, but at the same time, it's like now looking back, hindsight being 2020, I could see that Catherine was maybe a good person all along, and just protecting
mm,
her interests
yeah.
from those that are evil, or
Mm,
you know at the very least dealing with the dichotomy of Josie on one side and Ben Horn on the other,
right.
and
Yeah.
what
Exactly.
Catherine has to deal with to protect her interests, to protect her marriage, to protect the legacy of, yeah, her brother, right, Andrew,
Mm,
and what the mill meant to Andrew and Catherine and Pete before all of these evil forces started coming in to harass her.
mm.
So, yeah. Oh, and yeah, urchin. That line. Since the moment we met, I have been strangely. Yep, you got to say it like her. Since the moment we met, I have been strangely attracted to you. It's like what's going on in Pete's mind at that moment? I
Yeah. Right. At that
well,
moment, he's like, "What?"
I yeah, I just wanted to buy you a milk.
Yeah. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just being friendly.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
hilarious.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Um, I'm glad you're enjoying it, and thank you, Urchins, for being here. Um, you yeah, I assume you didn't have anything else to say about the episode,
Uh,
Scotty,
yeah, just some
or in
quick
general?
notes.
Okay, go for it.
Bob putting the letter, I think it was the letter D
Mm,
under
yeah,
Maddie's nail. Like I said,
or
I'm
it
going
might
to
have been
assume at
O.
this point Maddie is dead.
It's something like.
Also,
Yeah.
potentially Sarah. I
Mm,
mean, it's happening again, which clearly refers to Bob killing
murdering.
Maddie,
Yeah.
but Sarah would be a severe loose end because whatever
Yeah.
happened to Sarah, she very well potentially recognizes maybe that Leland is behind it. So I see only
Mm,
two options there, and that is either, or three options, let's say. Either uh, Bob is also going to kill Sarah to
mm,
clean it up, so to speak. Two, Sarah's going to have some kind of memory loss and can't.
mm,
She's there, she's awake, but she doesn't connect the dots of what just
Yeah.
happened. Because I would assume at this point that what happened was Bob attacked Sarah. That's why she was on the floor and
Mm,
crawling and all of that. Maybe she doesn't, maybe he hit her from behind on the back of the head or
mm,
broke her ankle, or, there's so many different ways that could go. Or um, she wasn't aware at all of what happened.
mm.
Like, he attacked her in some fashion and she has zero clue that it is Leland slash Bob. She
Yeah.
doesn't know what is going on and therefore isn't going to be able to connect the dots or come up
Yeah.
with any type of useful information for the police or something.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I'm assuming in the next episode when the police start investigating Maddie's death,
Mm,
there's going to be a scene involving Sarah where one of those three things is developed. And
yeah.
is she going to be of any type of use to that investigation? Or is she just, it's going to be a dead end for the police and they're going to have to investigate from a totally different angle? I'm not so sure that Sarah, if she is still alive, and I'm assuming she is still alive after this point, is
Mm,
going to be of any use to the investigation,
no.
and therefore isn't a loose end that eventually needs to be tied up by Bob.
Yeah.
Um, but in putting the letter under Maddie's fingernail, he's not only following the pattern, but I believe eventually um, the letters are not only going to point to some greater design. I
Mm,
mean, obviously it's a calling card, a
yeah.
murderer's calling card, but it is going to lead to some bigger piece of the puzzle that we have
Mm,
not figured out yet, and certainly not Cooper. He seems to have been, misdirected again by what these letters are potentially spelling out, but he's not even remotely close to being there yet, as we are not.
yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Um, and we're continuing a little bit on this concept of a parasite or some kind of supernatural entity possessing Leland and committing these murders, which means that he's been doing this. I mean, if we're gonna take Mike at his word, 40 years that this spirit
Mm,
has been possessing Leland and or maybe other
mm,
people, but
yeah.
probably just Leland, and committing these murders and doing other things. So there's maybe even potential murders that we have not even heard
Mm,
of that are part of Bob's repertoire,
yeah.
and what he means to the overall story as to what has not been connected yet and what he is responsible for, and even the alternate uh potential for where he came from, what he is, why
Mm,
he's there, and all of these things that have not yet been explored. And um I just find it interesting that they kind of like tied at least those portions of it up in the succinct, not with this reveal. Okay, now we know it's Leland and we can move forward on that basis. What is Bob responsible for
mm,
over the broad picture?
yeah.
And I will be highly interested in seeing,
Mm,
how from this point it's developed exactly what Bob is responsible for and why, because all along we've been building up to
yeah.
this kind of reveal, and now moving forward we will be looking for the specific answers to all of the
Mm,
questions that have been developing along that time. um and most of that revolves around Bob
mm.
and
Indeed.
his influence. So we'll see.
We shall. Uh, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, there we go. So this is aside from so we're at exactly the halfway point of the original run of the series. Not in viewing time because obviously we've had 2 of our first 15 episodes have been double length. I don't think I think the final episode is a standard length, so I don't think we've got any more double length episodes.
Okay.
But in terms of episode number, we are at the halfway point. So yeah, still a lot more to go yet. I assume you're good for next week, Scotty?
Yep. Yep. Should be good.
Excellent. The 4th of March, same time as always. Hope to have you here, urchins. No pressure though, of course. Yeah, for our next 2 episodes, 8 and 9, season 2. Drive with a Dead Girl. Not presumably.
Subtitle: Leland disposes of the body.
I mean, followed by Arbitrary Law. So I'll look forward to those. Lot to look forward to. But yeah, Scotty, Urchin's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you both have a wonderful rest of your days, and I'll see you and speak to you both very soon. If not before, next Saturday. Have a good one, guys. I'll see you
Take
soon.
care. Bye bye.